Do you have an addictive, compulsive personality? Are you addicted to work, sex, toxic relationships? Remember, addictions and compulsions can go beyond just substance abuse. So, I want to talk about why this happens, but from the point of view of trauma and the brain. So, let's go back to childhood. When we're children, we will all go through different levels of crisis and emotional distress. And when this happens, our bodies are filled with a hormone called cortisol. Now, the issue is that unlike adults, children cannot regulate themselves. They absolutely must have a caretaker to step in, validate them, cradle them, and pacify them in order for them to release all of that good stuff, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. They do not have the ability to release those hormones themselves and regulate themselves. So if that child is somewhat emotionally neglected in those moments, it means that their bodies are flushed with cortisol, which means that by the time they get to the linear years, like 10 or 11, it is very likely that that child is going to start seeking things externally in order to regulate themselves. Food, masturbation, compulsively playing games are all things that are going to help them release oxytocin and dopamine. So it's worth checking back on those years and looking at your habits, as it could tell you a lot about what is going on in your body and your mind as an adult. What happens going forward is you continue to have all of this cortisol brewing up in your body. And now the problem lies in that you are actually developing programs and systems within the mind and the brain, which is teaching you that in order to regulate yourself, you got to get it externally. And that's where the addictions come in. And we can become addicted to things like work, validation, even being a victim. And I know that like victim consciousness is annoying, but you have to remember it is serving a purpose for that person. So what do? Because these external substances aren't filling us up on a whole level, and they are somewhat synthetic. So unfortunately, there is no one-hit wonder. It takes a lot of time. I do think going back and recognizing where your problems come from is a start. I also believe that having an understanding of the relationship of the mind and the body when it comes to our compulsions can be helpful, as it dissociates us from the shame when we realize it's not all us. There is a biological element. And then, of course, begins the long, old, hard, painful journey of healing. And the reason that healing is hard is because we're literally reprogramming our minds, which requires us to feel very uncomfortable. It requires us, yes, to abstain from the external substances that we're seeking, but also to learn how to use that internal system of self-regulation, because all of us have a beautiful shop of pharmaceutical chemicals that we can depend on. It takes time. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But this is why I'm such an avid believer that any therapeutic practice absolutely must incorporate the subconscious mind and the body, because that is where these habits are deeply wired into.